Having grown up in church and been around Christians all of my life, I've had a lot of opportunities to hear different stories that people have told about how they came to faith, and I've encountered a lot of people who've told me stories about why they walked away from the faith, maybe for a season, or maybe they're still struggling with that. In particular, because I'm into apologetics, people will talk to me about reasons that they're walking away from the faith. And it's really interesting. There's a new movement going on that's been titled the deconstruction movement. And you can find videos on YouTube about this where people who used to be Christians have begun deconstructing their faith. And I've had an opportunity over the last 3 years to talk with 3 different individuals who are on this deconstruction path. And as I talk with them, what I really want to know is, how did you get started with this? A lot of times when we talk with people who are deconstructing their faith, they'll talk about all of these intellectual reasons why they think maybe the Bible's not reliable, or maybe they don't believe that God exists anymore, or something like that. But ultimately in the conversations, what I try to understand is, how did you, as somebody who went to church and were engaged in the faith, begin that journey of walking away? And what I found is really interesting is, it's not intellectual arguments that drive people away. It's not that they suddenly were faced with a challenge to God's existence that they couldn't overcome. To a person, those I've talked to began walking away from the faith because of hypocrisy in the church, because of the pain they felt when people who claimed to be Christian, who claimed to be saved by the grace of God through faith in Christ, acted in overt, obvious ways that did not accord with that kind of calling and that kind of salvation. People who claimed to be Christians but didn't act in a way that accorded with the faith. And this reflects a lot what Paul says in the passage we're covering today, that people who know how they're supposed to behave and claim that they're behaving that way, but then when you look at how they act, it just doesn't match up with what they're claiming to be. That kind of hypocrisy in God's people can be a huge deterrent to other people who are seeking the faith or who are trying to walk in faith from following along in that path. And it's just unfortunate, particularly in these 3 people's lives that I've talked to over the last few years, that they're still struggling with their faith and walking away from their faith because primarily they saw hypocrisy in the church and then began to build up all of these arguments later on about why they didn't believe in God. We always have to be mindful of that.